Hell with Vince McMahon. I don't need him.
Radiation is a curious thing. No one expects what it would bring.
Well, hello. Here we are again, another edition of Kato Reviews. Today, I have a big guest. But first, I'm looking good, feeling good, loving life. I hope that you can say the same. Today, my guest, he is a longtime Western Pennsylvania wrestler and trainer. He is Mr. Crusher Hansen. Crusher, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. Let's go ahead and jump right into it.
All right.
How did the love of wrestling start for you?
I think my love is a little different than everybody else's. I don't have a background of a lot of indie shows or the NWA or WWF because I grew up pretty poor, so we didn't have cable and everything else. It wasn't until probably, I don't know, sometimes in the 80s when we finally got TBS that I was able to see a little NWA stuff. But you know, I just always enjoyed when I'd see it. You know, I'm like, man, that looks pretty fun. You know, to see guys beating each other up. You know, I don't know. It was just something that it was different than I was used to seeing on TV because I didn't get exposed to anything like that.
Now, how old were you think you were when you first started watching it regularly?
Probably, let's see, 8, 9 years old.
Okay, so I mean that's...
Yeah, I mean, but it wasn't regular. It was, you know, TBS had the Saturday night show, and I would catch it, but it wasn't all the time. And I don't remember when WrestleMania 1 was. You can maybe help me. I'm not good at dates.
85.
So 85. We got that pay-per-view because we had cable, so that was like my first exposure to a big event like that. And, you know, I think it was Hogan. Was it Hogan and Sheik? Was that the main event for that one?
85. No, it would have been the tag match. Hogan and Mr. T versus
Okay, that's right. Yeah, right.
Piper
okay.
and Orndorff.
Yeah, I just remember, like, man, Mr. T being on there, and Hogan was larger than life. You know, that's where it kind of started for me.
You mentioned Hogan and T and some of these guys. Did you have some favorites growing up?
Well, Hulk Hogan was a favorite because he was the big name. I liked Roddy Piper because I just liked the gimmick. I liked, you know, the swarmy little, you know, talk, the way he would talk to his, you know, to people and stuff like that. And Snuka, I guess, was another one. You know, the vivid memory for me was the coconut to the side of the head in the Piper's Pit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always remembered that. And then there was other guys too, but you know, again, you know, you had your favorites. Like I didn't like the Sheik, and he didn't like the bad guys. I was more of a good guy, like the good guys back then. So yeah, that's.
So you saw WWF at WrestleMania. You saw some NWA on TBS.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a preference between the two?
No, not really.
Just wrestling?
Yeah, just wrestling. I don't remember a whole lot about the NWA stuff. I can remember they were set up in the little studio where there was just a ring, a couple fans, and then they had the podium. And, you know, every Saturday, you know, you could always count on the Four Horsemen and Flair and Wyndham and, you know, all the guys. So I remember that. But you know, my memory is not as good as remembering matches. You know, like some of the other guys can tell you, oh, this guy wrestled this guy. You know, I can't do all that. I just remember watching it and, you know, enjoying. I think I kind of more enjoyed the promos than always the in-ring action. You know, the setup to the matches is what I kind of enjoyed watching.
Well, I think, you know, everybody says they love matches, but in truth, those are the things we remember long term. You know, just particular angles and promos and, you know, those are the things that really create memories. And I think sometimes indie wrestling gets away from that a little bit. And I don't want to get into a long debate about what's right and wrong about indie wrestling, but you know.
Yeah, the build-up. I think it's the build-up that, you know, and then the payoff is what, you know, I enjoy. I like that build-up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want it to be one and done. I like, you know, the storyline, keep it going, and then the blowout. That's what makes it.
Well, how did you, after watching it somewhat, doesn't sound like maybe you were a ravenous fan in the way that maybe I was or a lot of people were. How do you go from being somebody who watches it when it's on to being somebody that says, hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be a wrestler. How does that happen for you?
Well, here's a story. 1995, I had a blood clot in my leg, and I was laid up in a hospital for 5 days. I got out and I got a job working for a brick cleaning company. And at the end of the season of '95, I guess it would be like September, he laid me off. So I was laid off for a period of time between September and I can't remember, it was somewhere in '96. And I remember every morning listening to Bubba on the radio. And I had nothing else to do. I kept listening to Bubba on the radio. And it was when he first started at PWX. And he was, they were promoting the first show that he was going to be on. And I'm listening to it, I'm like, and before then I had no idea there was even, I always wondered how these guys got into wrestling, how you became a wrestler. But I never knew that there was an indie circuit where these guys came up. I knew nothing about that. I knew nothing about the indies. So he started talking about this wrestling, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this is pretty neat. I'd like to see this wrestling. And then he's talking about Eastland, which was right around this corner from my house, 2 miles. So I called the radio one day, and I talked to Bubba. He answered the phone. I asked him about the wrestling, and he told me, yeah, there's a school at Eastland. He said, go up there, talk to the trainer, and, go from there. So that's what I did. The trainer at the time was B.A. Briggs, and I came up, and the day I came up, Mad Mike was doing his tryout. So I sat there and I watched his tryout and seen what it was all about, and I thought, I think I'd want to do this. It was just something like I would watch wrestling, not as a huge fan, but always wonder, how can I get involved in that? Not pursuing it, but whenever it finally came to a point where, it was something that was possible to happen, I thought, man, I'm going to take advantage of this. I want to try this.
So when you first started, were there specific things when you started training that maybe were more difficult or maybe you personally struggled with as far as those first weeks of maybe taking bumps or learning to run ropes? Was there anything that really stood out to you like, man, I can't believe this cardio or any of it? Yeah.
You think it's going to be easy. I think everybody thinks it's going to be easy. Everybody thinks the ring is so soft. In reality, it is cushioned, padded, not cushioned, but it does hurt. And we all know that. And so I think taking bumps wasn't a big deal to me. That wasn't that bad. I had a lot of mass on me, so it didn't bother me. It was running the ropes. And when I was trained to run the ropes, I was trained to 3 points of contact, under the arm, hip, and calf. And leaving after working out 2-3 hours a night, I had bruises, huge bruises. So that was probably like the worst part about my start of training, was running the ropes. Ironically enough, it's probably one of the easiest things you do, but when you're hitting those ropes over and over and over again, your body's not used to that.
You're sort of jumping all over the place now, but I think you're one of the last guys left that sort of run the ropes. And for anybody that doesn't know, the way Crusher hits the ropes is all sort of on his side, as opposed to the majority of the guys now sort of hit it flat.
Right.
And I know that's sort of a very old school style, the way
Sure,
you do it.
right.
Was there ever a point where you thought, my ribs and my hip are killing me, I'm going to switch over to the other way?
Well, I tend to watch some matches of mine, and there's times I just adjust. I don't know why, I'll run one way, run the other way. But no, I was taught that way, and for the most part, that's the way I've always ran them. And even training guys, we'll train one way, I'll show them my way, and then they can decide which way they like the best. And, for me, that's just the way I feel more comfortable that way. And like you said, it's a little more safer.
How long did you train before you had your first match?
I started training in March of 1996. Had my first match May 1st of 1996.
2 months.
2 months.
Ooh. Were you ready at all at 2 months?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I was ready to be in there. Now, I wasn't so good on psychology, but I was able to get in there and not look like crap. I won't say I was the best, but in those 2 months, we put a lot of time in. Back then, we trained long hours. B.A. Briggs would get there in the evenings, sometimes 8, 9 o'clock, and we would train until 2 in the morning, 2-3 nights a week. And back then I would come up here because it was back at Eastland, it was accessible, and we would go up there and we'd do things on our own, some of the guys, and some of the older guys would be there, and I'd work out with them a little bit. So yeah, I was ready. Was I really good? No, but I was better than some guys coming out or not being trained at all. Mm-hmm. You know, I wasn't embarrassing myself, I guess I should say.
The first match, you have any specific memories of it? Who was your opponent?
Barry Ray Koloff.
Okay.
It was at the Palisades in Monroeville, which is no longer there. It's now UPMC East Hospital. And I can remember we ran a leapfrog spot where he leapfrogged and I went under. But when I went under, I guess I didn't get down far enough. So I kind of tumbled him over. Instead of just scratching it and going on to the next thing, we decided, okay, when he called the match, he was the veteran. So we did it a second time. Same thing happened. So I said, okay, that's it. We're not going to do that again. And then the other thing I remember about that match was I counted at least 45 to 50 boots I laid into him. So when I was chopping wood, really, chopping wood is, punching, kicking, and stuff like that. I probably kicked him 50 times in the match, because, I knew stuff, and that to me was like the best thing that looked the best for me. Kicking and punching was, I picked that up pretty easy, so, I kind of went to that. I just went to what I knew.
Sure. So it's been over 22 years now since that first match.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, this person sitting here today could go back and give advice to that kid at that time, what kind of advice would you give them? Not just for that day, but for the next 22 years that followed.
Oh boy, that's a good question. Well, I think I would tell that kid to hit the gym a little more, and if your dream was to make it to the next level, put the time and effort into making it to that next level, which I never really did, but other circumstances led to that decision of mine. I think that's probably what I would tell him.
So, I guess again, since you brought it up, we're gonna jump into it. It's one of the questions I have for later on, but we'll jump into it now. You had mentioned maybe this young guy had dreams of getting somewhere. Looking back on it now, are you bitter at all that maybe you didn't accomplish your initial dreams?
When I first started going through training, my dream was never really to be a WWE superstar. Some guys had that dream. I wanted to wrestle, and it didn't matter to me if I made it to the next level. That might sound weird, but it didn't really matter to me. So that wasn't really my dream. What was the question again? I kind of got lost in my thought.
Do you feel like
regrets?
Are you bitter at all
No.
that you didn't get to a higher level?
Right. No, I'm not. I've had a good run. Even though it's been on the indie circuit, I think I've had a good run, and I don't regret anything. I've had a cup of coffee with the WWE a couple times. I really didn't do a lot. We were there as extras. Didn't really get on the shows, but I got paid. I got to talk to people. I made, contacts. So I don't regret it. No, I really don't.
You've wrestled a lot of guys here at PWX, now Fight Society, over the years, and you've really been a mainstay of PWX and Fight Society, which I want to talk about a little later, but right now let's focus in on some of the guys that you've wrestled over the last 22 years.
Okay.
Who would you say are some of your favorite guys that you've ever got to work, not just matches, but programs with in the last 22 years?
Well, Quinn would come to mind. We've had a lot of feuds back in the day. Me and Quinn started as a tag team, Sticks and Stones. I enjoyed that a lot, but it didn't run very long because they had bigger plans for Quinn. He's a giant. You're going to keep him stuck in a tag program with another guy. So I enjoyed working him. Chris Taylor. Me and Chris Taylor had a lot of good matches. And Brandon Kay. I always felt like, I was always bigger than. I'm not a very tall guy, but I'm a stocky guy. So I always enjoyed working those littler guys because I can kind of work, even though I was a big guy, I was athletic enough to work their style. So, I can adapt, not necessarily doing the flying and stuff like that, but being able to take those bumps and stuff like that. So I always enjoyed, working like that as the heel, controlling the match, and then making that baby look good in the end. Because it was never really, even from the beginning, I guess when you first start, you always think, oh, I want a title and this and that, but I did it first, but shortly into it, I was just like, man, I just want my matches to look good. I want I want to look good. I want my person I'm working to look equally as well. And if the program meant for me to make that baby look good, or if I'm the baby, make me look good, then that's really all that mattered to me was, the crowd enjoying the matches, not necessarily what I'm doing as far as angle-wise. If the crowd was entertained, that was good enough for me.
You personally, how do you said about making guys look good, how do you go about that personally, making a small guy or a big guy, any guy, look good in the ring? What's your philosophy?
Well, I mean, I guess, first of all, bumping good, making it look realistic, putting that guy over. A lot of guys now, and I'm not naming names or anything like that, but a lot of these baby faces, all they want to do is shine, 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 shine. But it can't be that way. You've got to tell a story. And when I was trained, our story to tell was like a roller coaster. Your ups and downs. So I always try to make sure we have our ups and downs. Make that baby face. When we're up here, that's when the crowd's really into it. I'll make sure that I'm selling all I can. He's got me, on the ropes. And down here, I'm working him. I'm getting that crowd into it, getting that sympathy for him, so that whenever he does decide it's his time to shine, now there's a reason for the fans to get behind him to shine. So that was always kind of my philosophy. Probably the same with you. I mean, we've trained together for a little bit in these past couple years past, and I think we kind of have the same philosophy. Kind of a little old school, but I think old school. I kind of like the old school philosophy better than the new school philosophy, I guess.
I agree. You said about, baby faces just want to shine, 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 but think about the greatest baby faces in history. They all got down on the ground and sold.
Right.
And
exactly.
That way they could build a big fiery comeback. And you're right. It does seem like a lot of guys now they don't want to look weak, not
Right.
even for a minute.
Right, and they want to get everything in. They want to make sure they got every move that's in their arsenal. They have to get in that match. Not me. If I do two things, then that's fine. I don't need to show everything I can do in every match. It just doesn't make any sense.
So we've talked about some of your favorite opponents. How about favorite specific matches? Do you have any matches, maybe 2 or 3 that you could talk about that, like, I love this match and this is the reason why?
There was a match me and Brandon Kay had at an anniversary show, and I couldn't tell you what anniversary show it was. I was the national champion at the time, and it was an Iron Man match. He was fighting me for the national title, and just the story we told, for me to go 30 minutes when I was probably 280, 290 at the time was pretty good, but we told a good story, and the crowd was into it. And that to me, when we went that time, I believe it was a draw. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that was an enjoyable time. And then back when I first started was kind of around the ECW era. So there was a lot of hardcore stuff going on. So we had a lot of hardcore matches, and I can remember one in particular where it was, I can't remember what group I was in, but it was against Quinn and Mad Mike. It was probably me and Boomer Payne, and Quinn did the spot where we were standing on the top rope at the old WrestlePlex. We were both standing up there. We're exchanging punches. So we have a table set up down below, exchanging. He gets the best of me. I fall from the top rope through the table onto a cement floor. So he's standing up there looking at me, and I'm looking up at him, and he's thinking to himself, I just can't stand here. So here comes this 270-pound guy, top rope, drops an elbow, dead in my chest, knocks the wind out of me. I think I'm dead. With the crowd again, they erupted. That was a good memory I can remember. Just those hardcore matches, which looking back on it, I wish I didn't do as many as I did, but back then that's what the fans wanted to see. Unfortunately, coming through at that point, that was the era of ECW, so that's what, and they were more borderline indie at the time, so that's what these indie fans wanted to see. They didn't want to see, lockups and everything else. They just wanted to see blood and weapons and
Sure.
all that other stuff.
Let's talk about NWA East PWX Fight Society. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, your tenure have you ever left that brand at any point?
Yes. 6 months of my wrestling career, I guess you could, I wasn't with PWX. I worked a little bit with IWC and some other indie promotions in Ohio, West Virginia. But
What led to you leaving during that short period?
well, here's a story for you. So